Welcome to Penthouse or Outhouse, where two product managers dissect startups that went to the moon or went down in flames. In this episode, we revisit a 2010s classic, Juicero, founded by an army veteran turned health evangelist who believed everyone would want a juice bar in their home. The question was, did they really? Especially with a locked-in ecosystem of $1,000 juice press machines, but juice pods you could squeeze by hand? Let's see what happened.
All right, it's 1984. A teenage Doug Evans has grown up on the standard American diet, or SAD, as health influencers like to call it these days. So sodas, processed foods, drive-thrus. He then joined the 82nd Airborne Division of the US Army, and that's one of several pivotal moments in his life. Army life is obviously pretty tough, but, clarifying for him, he was doing hundreds of push-ups, long runs, lean rations, structured life. And later, he credits that period with breaking his junk food habit and showing him what his body could really do. And after leaving the Army in the late 80s or early 90s, he settles into civilian life and he studies and he starts working in graphic design. And life continues pretty normally. But then both of his parents die of lifestyle-related diseases. His brother suffers a stroke and also type 2 diabetes. He says that this experience becomes a key motivator for him, and he believes that it was diet, not just bad luck, that caused his parents and family members to be of poor health. And that idea sort of percolates until 1999. He attends the Big Apple Vegetarian Society meeting in New York, and he meets a woman called Denise Mari. She's a wellness educator, she's a raw food advocate, and she introduces him to the raw vegan diet, which he's been on ever since. He swaps the gym out, starts taking up yoga and meditation, and he credits her with introducing him to the divine feminine. I don't know what that means, but his words, not mine. And he defined his life mission at that point, and that's to heal humanity through food. Will, how are you going? That's our scene for today.
I have no idea where this is going. This is very exciting.
You're very excited?
This is what an adventure. What an adventure going from army jock to vegan chef.
Yeah, huge. You never know how much of this is post hoc rationalization and marketing.
Yeah.
The origin story for his startup, but he did credit it with this sort of backstory in interviews at least. So I think we can take him at his word for now that this was his motivation.
So there's some PR spin, but the core of the story probably holds some truth.
I expect so. It'd be pretty raw, excuse the pun, to be just using your family's ill health as a means of promoting your own business. But, there's probably some truth to it.
I'm not sure that hasn't been done before either.
No, I'd suspect it probably has in the standard sort of 2000s to 2010 startup world that we're going to be diving into in this series. But we'll get back into the story, and I think that it does require some more preamble in terms of setting the scene through what his first venture was, because that's not the venture we're going to be talking about today. Because frankly, it is just.
Are we talking about the failed graphic design venture?
Oh, we're not talking about the graphic design venture. There's a second and a third venture. The second one, he starts to get more in the direction of where he's going to be going with his big swing for the fences.
Okay.
I think it provides important context. So that was something called Organic Avenue, which was in New York, and it was a juice bar, basically, founded in Soho. And it was actually quite...
Oh, we love a juice bar.
Yeah, I feel like there was someone on Australian Shark Tank who founded Boost or something.
Yeah. Janine. Good old Janine.
This one actually did relatively well for at least a period. So it ran from 2002 to 2012. Its mission, as you know, deliver fresh, raw vegan food and cold-pressed juices to urban consumers. Cold press being very important.
Yes,
you don't want any of that shredded juice. Yuck.
None of that. And so was this disrupted by Juicero?
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that.
No.
So this was the origin story of the founder of Juicero. So he started off with a business that went pretty well. So he had retail stores. It had delivery juice. This was before Uber Eats and Deliveroo and all those sorts of things. So bit of a frame breaker there. And at its height, it had 10 stores, $1 million a month in revenue. Celebrities were endorsing it. And it was all about, yoga, minimalism and purity and health as identity. He found out that people wanted better nutrition, or at least ostensible nutrition. It has come out that it's pretty sugary juice and not actually that good for you. So he exited in 2012, and then it went bankrupt in 2015, which is one of the classic circumstances of somebody sees it as like, well, the idea was right. It was going well under me. It was just the execution obviously sucked once I left.
It was definitely the execution that was the problem with bags of fruit that you put in the most over-engineered squeezing machine that anyone's ever seen.
Well, let's get to that, because he was thinking, I can go bigger, like Organic Avenue, retail stores, boring. And I quote, I thought, what can I do to have the greatest impact on humanity, on human health?
Okay.
So that's a big swing.
Yeah, obviously bags of fruit are the way to go.
Well, yeah, he wanted to industrialize health, which hadn't been done before.
Isn't that what massive drug companies exist for, and like McKinsey does consulting for and then gets enormous fines for? We're industrializing health all over the place.
Hey, man, you're being cynical. As he said many times in interviews, he just drives a Prius. He doesn't care about getting wealthy.
Of course.
Yeah. And there's a gap, obviously, because home juices are messy and they're slow and rarely used, according to him. And what he was trying to create with Juicero, because a lot of our listeners won't have actually heard of it, but his idea was the Keurig for juice. For the Australians who are going to listen to this, think Nespresso machine, Expressi, if we're getting more Aldi version of that.
Chic.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So fresh juice, minimal mess, no prep. That was a value prop. And in 2013, he hired a metal worker from Chinatown to build his first prototype. He used an air compressor, which inflated a bag between two cutting boards. And he was trying to show that the cold pressed juice could be miniaturized at that point and brought into a 10-inch by 10-inch thing that you could put on your countertop.
And so do we know why that couldn't be done before? Like how was cold pressed juice made before the Juicero?
I think I've got an answer to that. I reckon no one gave a shit. My best guess.
Yeah, seems reasonable.
His whole argument was that cold pressed juice preserved the enzymes of the juice because it didn't heat up with the blade spinning around. I did a little bit of research. There isn't really much evidence behind that. He also said that it preserved the cell walls, which I'm skeptical of, because obviously the way that you're making it juice is you're bursting the cell walls just instead of cutting them through pressure. Anyway, they worked on prototypes for 33 months, so it must have been good. And 33 months.
Isn't that as long as Figma took to make? Like, that's as long as it took Dylan and Field, or whatever his name is, to make Figma.
Yeah, I believe it. Well, it also cost them $120 million from Google Ventures, Kleiner Perkins, and Artis Ventures. That's how much they raised from 2014 through to 2016.
The beauty of the zero interest rate environment. Wow.
Yeah.
The shit you could just like throw money at.
Well, I've got a quote here from Google Ventures' David Crane, which is the most complicated business we've ever funded, which for Juice is interesting.
Which for Google is interesting. Google is investing in like quantum computing. Like, I'm not sure. Like, the Juicero, the high superposition of the fruit is really important in the Juicero.
Hey, Evans called it a 3-part system. There's hardware, the produce packs, and then a software platform to track them all. So he actually refers to Juicero as a juice platform several times in interviews, because classic early 2010s, it's a platform play. It's not just a juicer, it's a platform.
Were the juice packs DRM'd?
You're going to have to translate that for our audience, because I definitely know what that means.
So think iTunes, where you download a song and you can't do other stuff with it. It's yours and it's labeled, and it won't play in any software other than iTunes or on an iPod or whatever. Like, it's constrained to the environment. And then it's like if Nespresso machines only worked with Nespresso pods, and Nespresso pods only worked with Nespresso machines.
Yeah. So I was going to get to that. It's actually quite interesting. So they had a QR code on them, and it would scan the QR code ostensibly for food safety, because it didn't want to press people out of date juice. But obviously then it wouldn't work if it didn't scan the QR code, which brought two problems. One, you couldn't just get juice from the supermarket, obviously. So you had to subscribe to their packs of fruit, which were triple washed. That's a nice word that they used in their marketing. Essential. Also, if you had a Wi-Fi outage, then no juice for you.
Oh, I love where things go offline because the Wi-Fi's out. The best one was the 8 Sleep one recently, when AWS went down and people's beds stopped working.
Their beds stopped working?
The bed stopped working. So 8 Sleep is a air-conditioned, heated sleeping system. I don't know exactly how it works. I think it pumps water like in and around your mattress and whatever. And in the recent AWS outage, people's bed temperature stopped being managed because the 8 Sleep couldn't connect to the software platform that for some reason it needed to ask the cloud to keep the temperature of your bed the same. And so actually a whole bunch of like tech people who have these 8 Sleeps were woken up because their sleeping temperature wasn't at their perfect optimized level. And that's how they discovered the AWS outage, because they got woken up because their bed stopped working.
Yeah, I mean, how could you possibly sleep if your temperature wasn't being optimized?
Yeah. And with AWS down, I mean, it's probably a good reason for a bunch of them to wake up and go and deal with it. But, I don't think that was the intent. It was just a happy byproduct.
Back to how complicated this business was. So the supply chain was 14 partner farms, refrigerated trucks, triple washed produce, vacuum sealed packs. The software platform tracked order delivery, expiry verification, and farm to consumer logistics. But for me, the most hilarious investment is straight off the bat. I mean, they've got to spend their $120 million on something. They had a 110,000 square feet LEED gold cold facility in LA. So that's 10,000 square meters for people who don't use Freedom units, which is a pretty big factory. And its capacity, I think it was something like, it could have done over 1 million packets per week, but for reasons that will become clear, it really only got to about 50,000 at sort of max, which, I mean, if you can sell 50,000 of anything per week, I feel like that is an achievement. It's just, if you spend $120 million to get there, then that's where the tricky bit comes in.
Were they vertically integrated? Like, did they own any of these farms? Or like,
No.
How far up the chain did they go? It was just the manufacturing and the distribution of the packs.
Yeah, so they owned the juice platform, but not the farms. They triple washed the juice in their facility and then distributed the packs. And they sold the Juicero at $699, which is pretty US dollars, obviously. So
yeah,
in 2016 dollars, that's quite a lot. He justified it at the time as, I quote, "I think without being egotistical, I can give you the analogy of Tesla with a Roadster. This is our first entry into the market. We did a small batch and we need to get it out to the world." So I want to get your reaction to that analogy, Will. How do we feel about that analogy?
Look, it's a pretty classic market entry strategy of building the expensive thing to fund your technological development and then going down market from there. I suspect that is far more applicable in industries where you need to completely invent new technology and then have very high regulatory burdens for getting that technology approved. I suspect for something that you could actually squeeze with your hands, maybe less of a relevant strategy.
I'm going to ask you a couple more references and see how you continue to think about this analogy, because I think it's a little bit smelly for another reason.
Did you not scan the QR code and it's off? Is that why it's smelly?
Yeah, so I didn't scan the QR code for that PR spin, but he was talking about the force that this juicer could generate. And the way he described the force was enough to lift 2 Teslas. Are you getting a theme here?
Okay.
Got another analogy here. I saw a big gap, similar to the spirit of what Apple did, taking the mainframe computer and creating the personal computer. I looked at it. Was it possible to take a mainframe juice press and create a personal juice press? It's also hardware. It's literally 1 part iPhone and 1 part Tesla Roadster.
Oh no, he wants to be the next great American innovator.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the first, with any one of those analogies in isolation, you're like, okay, like he's trying to make a point. He's saying that, you come up with an expensive thing. You use that to fund more of a mass market product, fine.
Yeah.
But I think that he's going for trying to take the brand sheen of these really hot companies and just place his juicer as adjacent to those.
Yeah.
And just condition the market to be like, yeah, this guy's an innovator.
Always a bad place to start. To want to be the next great innovator for your own personal brand and your validation, and backing into that with a juicer.
Well, that's why you've got to raise $120 million, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but everyone was raising $120 million then. Money didn't cost anything. It was fine. Don't worry about it.
I like to come from the perspective of like, I've watched some softball interviews with him. I watched some more hard-hitting news pieces on him. It's like, okay, where's he coming from? What's he trying to do? And obviously he's trying to promote his new business.
Yeah.
It's just part of the game. Trying to make it Apple and Tesla adjacent is a little interesting. It's a theme you get through all of his interviews. He worked with Steve Jobs once, but of course he name drops that in as well. Like, I was being yelled at by both Steve and Paul Rand back in the same day, and it's Just sort of replace the turtlenecks with some linen and linen pants and those little toe shoes.
There's an interesting question here, though, of the comparison between Juicero and Apple and Tesla, right? The Juicero was fundamentally over-engineered. You don't need to be able to lift 2 Teslas to crush some juice. I don't know that you would say Tesla is over-engineered. They led with the expensive thing because that was a way to develop the technology and get the regulatory stuff done and like get a bit of a sheen around it. But like actually the cars were not over-engineered. And then you look at like the Model Y now and it could be more engineered. Look, Apple maybe in some instances certainly has lent towards over-engineering, but at scale their engineering is probably like where it needs to be to meet the market and to like ship the thing at the scale that they need to ship it. There's a bit of like wool pulling over the eyes here of like, oh, Apple and Tesla, they started expensive and then went down market. But that doesn't necessarily mean over-engineering.
Yeah. Well, they were producing something that needed to be expensive. The thing you're referring to is that this is something that you could literally squeeze with your hands. And that was when the PR started really going south for them, is that there was like this meme of people just squeezing the juice with their hands and having more or less the same result. But they're in their advertising being like, there are 400 custom parts, 2 motors, 10 printed circuit boards, a wireless chip, 775 aircraft grade aluminium. These are quotes, by the way. Like, I'm not riffing here.
You could get 2 like chopping boards and sit on them and you'd do the same thing.
And how do we feel about the QR codes? Do you take that at face value? Do you think that that's critical for the health of the customers?
Look, maybe he was ahead of the curve on QR codes. You just needed a global pandemic for those to really take off. I think the functionality-wise, I can see an argument for the health and safety side of it, but presumably if the fruit is sealed in a vacuum-sealed bag and triple washed and whatever else, maybe not. I guess if you want to run the juice platform, though, you need to lock people in. Look at HP and ink in its printers. It's the same story. It's the same story.
Sort of, but it also feels fundamentally weirder when traditionally with a juicer, you could literally just go to your supermarket and be like, oh, actually, I want some juice and buy the fruit you want.
Yeah, but that's not a platform, Ben. That's not a juice platform. God, you got to get on board with the vision.
Well, look, one thing that he said that I actually do think is a reasonable defense. He said, you can wash your clothes by hand. You can pour hot water on coffee grounds instead of using an espresso machine and it will make you coffee.
Yeah.
Which I think is actually a reasonable defense.
Not defense for the QR codes, though.
No, I think that's bogus. Yeah, so I think that I'm maybe more cynical than you. I can't see any reasonable justification for needing to put... I mean, I guess it's easier to clean if you have the packets, but like, why not make it able to be genericized? I think that's where a lot of their hate came from, and that's why people wanted to do things that would make it fail, because they were like, hey, fuck this company that's making me scan a QR code to make juice and selling the packets of cut up fruit at $8 a pop, which is quite a lot. And I think that what they got wrong was they thought that what they were drawing the analogy to is like, okay, well, people would pay $10 for a juice out at a shop, so they'd be willing to pay like $5 here, as opposed to having the benchmark being like, what, if I was to juice fruit with another juicer at home, then what would I be paying? Yeah.
I guess you can draw an analogy to coffee there as well, where, great, like people will pay, what is it now, $8 or whatever for a cappuccino or a latte or something.
Is that how much they'll pay now?
It's like probably 6 to 8 in Sydney at least.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't really buy coffee here. I just have my little drip coffee, drink my Joe. I never would have been the target market of this product.
Yeah. But I guess it's like the coffee thing of people pay that much. Okay, so they'll pay like $2 for an espresso pot and they'll have it at home, which is a much bigger price difference, I suppose. But there's also not like a way to get a great equivalent to a latte at home. You need like unless you go for the full espresso machine, basically your option otherwise is like drip or instant or something. Whereas this feels like you can just go and buy a bottle of juice, or you can squeeze your own juice manually, or you can use a normal juicer, or you could pay $8 and use a Juicero. But actually none of them are quite as nice as going out and getting a juice.
Yeah. And I think it's also interesting, like the point you said about just going and buying a bottle of juice, like how much does the product actually degrade by having it just in the fridge for a little while versus it being a fresh pressed juice. Like, how much does that matter? And
Yeah.
for $8, I'm really doubting that the volume of juice you're going to get is going to be anywhere near. Look, that being said, so that apparently on average it was being used 9.5 times per week by the people who had it. They offered a full refund when the PR nightmare sort of came, and only 5% claimed it. I mean,
yeah, okay.
How much is that as laziness, and how difficult was the refund to claim? Like, was it like a Nathan Fielder style? Did they have to go and climb a mountain and answer a series of riddles and camp out overnight? So you never know.
The whole thing feels like a Nathan for You sketch.
It does a little bit.
Like, really?
Yeah. What I'm interested in, Will, is your opinion here of like, what do you think are the primary reasons for the failure here? Obviously, there's both the supply side issues and then there's the demand side issues. What do you think was determinative?
I mean, I think it's an interesting point that so many of the customers decided to keep it even when they had the option of sending it back. And so maybe actually, and there's all kinds of like expensive stuff for people who have money to spend. Products like that exist across every category. So maybe maybe it isn't actually, maybe it was a failure of business strategy and financial management rather than actually that the core value proposition wasn't good. I don't know.
That's how I read it, right? If you're selling 50,000 packets a week and people are using it 10 times a week, like obviously someone likes the product, right? But I think it feels like they're massively overestimating the market. They're being like, we're going to sell just as many of these as Keurigs are selling. And we need a 110,000 square foot facility and $120 million of seed capital in order to get this thing off the ground. When in reality, if they had just started off relatively small and sold within California, they probably could have made like a perfectly profitable enough business. And I think that maybe part of it was the cultural environment that they were in when everyone was taking just huge swings.
Totally.
And no one gave a fuck about profitability. They were all just, we need to grow and get the entire market. I'm just imagining the conversations like, we're not the only one sitting around thinking about this, right? Like,
there are so many juice competitors. There's probably an interesting analogy in like Thermomixes. Thermomixes are, I don't know, in Australia, probably $2,500 a pop, but they inspire unbelievable loyalty. People go door to door, not door to door, but they do the parties where they sell them, and people love them. But very few people have them. They appeal obviously to a market that can afford that. I mean, they have a subscription as well, but it's more about the recipes and the actual processes for the machine to deliver you a certain food. But that's a really successful business. It would actually be a really interesting comparison of like Thermomix and Juicero, because you could see how there's a strong overlap there in terms of the target market and like their willingness to pay for convenience and everything else. But so why has one been so wonderfully successful and not become like a total tech in-joke, like a Silicon Valley, the TV show style reference, and how did one become that?
It's super interesting. I mean, I think that it has to be due to the poor unit economics and fixed costs, because obviously if you raise that much money and then inevitably he would have been facing a down round, but you're then trying to go out and hawk investors when they just do a quick Google of your company and they see people hand squeezing the juice. That's not going to make it a particularly friendly environment to raise money in.
I do wonder to what extent the over-engineering of the hardware was also, that's not necessarily bad strategy or bad financial management, just an unnecessary choice to do that. Like, that's bad execution. But I wonder to what extent, given that he has a military background, like that's a pretty consistent story in military applications where products have a vast amount of engineering applied to them.
True.
And are like probably over-engineered, and the costs blow out, and they're really expensive, and they only ever get generated at small scale. I wonder to what extent like that history of seeing how that kind of tech was built.
Really, he wanted to be Lockheed Martin for juice.
The Juicero actually came out of the Skunk Works.
Yeah. He hasn't completely gone away from business since. He's definitely not going on like full massive investment, big seed rounds. That said, I did see him on an episode of Shark Tank hawking his new business, It's still on health.
What's his new one?
Sprouts. It's all about like broccoli sprouts and stuff. To be fair, there is some evidence to suggest that they are nutrient dense. I think broccoli sprouts have some sort of chemical that have some possible link to like brain health as you age.
Let's hope he's having his broccoli when he's thinking about his next business venture.
Yeah, well, I can only recommend going on his Instagram because I'll put a couple of videos up. I'll splice them into this podcast so people can see, because with the stuff that he's doing, again, he does tread that line between overhyping things. I think that he's kept that in his DNA. Like, I don't think he's learned that lesson. Like, he's learned the don't massively overinvest early and grow more slowly and things. And, you know, he went on Shark Tank, but I know people have gone on Shark Tank and they do that for publicity, not for the shitty deals they get. Because usually the deals are like, we'll give you $30,000 for 50% of your company. Yeah. And they just go, sure, I'll agree so that you air my episode. And then in due diligence, I will absolutely back out of this deal.
Yeah, of course.
So I assume that he's done that. But yeah, some of the claims he's made, 100 times more nutritious than vegetables.
What if I told you that you could grow the most nutrient-dense food on the planet?
What if I told you there is an app on the market?
No, not now. No, you wait until you're inside, okay?
They are up to 100 times more nutritious than the average vegetable.
And one that he's using a lot, it's this classic thing that people do in any sort of alternative health sphere. This is the quote: the pharaohs were sprouting 5,000 years ago.
The pharaohs in 5,000 years ago in Egypt, they were sprouting.
My grandmother gave me a family recipe before she died in a horrible way.
Some ancient wisdom in there.
Did the pharaohs live that long though? Like, did the pharaohs have great brain health?
No, I think they got buried with all of their possessions at quite a young age. So I'm not sure why that's a great...
Yeah. It doesn't feel like a compelling pitch to me. Isn't that also sailing into the headwind of like the anti-cruciferous vegetable trend?
Enlighten me. What's this trend?
The vibes are off for cruciferous vegetables at the moment. I don't exactly know what the scope of cruciferous vegetables is. There's like broccoli and Brussels sprouts and all the stuff in that category.
Well, do broccoli sprouts count as broccoli, or are they sprouts and so therefore not yet evolved into the...
I mean, I assume that's like saying, is a child a human though? Like, it's not a different species. Not going to be like any less funky for you, I assume. I don't know. Anyway, this is a good research topic. I'll come back next time with a response.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to that. And, you know, I do encourage you to go and have a look at his linen pants and toe shoes. He has some videos of him doing his sprout power push-ups because protein's overrated in his opinion.
I'm at 59 years old. I'm just going to bang out some push-ups. That's sprout power. Off the bench, onto the floor, 50 push-ups. Let's grow.
So that's fun.
So sprout power push-ups.
He does like 50 push-ups and there's like sprout power. I'm not going to critique his form. He's like 60, so, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing push-ups at 60, like, good on you, you know, no matter what they're for, right?
Well, it's very interesting. I don't know where I land on this particular guy. I can see how he sort of got himself trapped in there, but he does also have like a bit of a history both in Juicero and also subsequently in his sprouting business of grandiosity and making things pretty expensive. And I mean grandiosity in terms of like the Steve Jobs references, the Tesla references, talking about how it's 1,000 times more nutritious than vegetables and look at all these push-ups I can do. I mean, I guess you got to get attention somehow, but yeah, what's your verdict given our discussion today? Obviously, this one goes into the Outhouse, not so much the Penthouse, given we're talking about primarily Juicero. But what do you reckon?
Yeah.
Sincere intentions? Did he get chewed up and spat out by Silicon Valley and he's an innocent victim in all of this? Or do you think he was maybe crushed by the force of his own product, which could bench press Teslas or whatever?
Crushed by the lack of cultural impact of Juicero. Actually, no, high cultural impact for Juicero. Yeah, so Juicero, definitely the Outhouse. You know, broccoli sprouts, potentially also in the Outhouse. My sense is that he has a grand vision for the world, but needs a very, very sensible, down-to-earth co-founder to make sure the execution happens properly and that it's well managed. I don't think you can change the world not being a bit unreasonable, but if you're only unreasonable, you're probably never going to change the world. You need the other side of that as well.
On the flip side, so I might take a bit more of a cynical view because
if your goal
is to improve human health and have like a massive impact in that way, why is your answer juice with QR codes?
Good question. I guess if you've successfully started a juice bar and you think that that is doing good things for people, it's an obvious lane to stay in. I guess you would go back to the question of why did you start the juice bar? That's the origin story for Juicero there.
He's just trying to scale it. I mean, it's interesting that he's doing it as an antidote to his brother who got diabetes, obviously given the high sugar content of punching heaps of juice, but hey.
The 9.5 sachets of juice, QR sachets of juice every week, probably not doing great for anyone's diabetes. Look, maybe he was invested in Eli Lilly at the same time and just riding the Ozempic
That would
wave.
be my favorite plot twist ever.
Actually, masterstroke. Actually a genius.
So just before we wrap up, one of my favorite plot twists that came out recently. So, you know, I think they're called like the blue zones or whatever. Everyone was obsessed for ages with the Mediterranean diet. How are these people living so long, smoke, they do whatever. It must be the Mediterranean diet. Or, as it turns out, pension fraud, where people lived really, really long. Turns out they'd been dead for like decades. And it was their family members who were reporting them as still alive so that they could collect their pension.
Perfect. The ultimate closing argument for QR packets of juice. They're like the blue zones of the tech world.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I would encourage any listeners to send through thoughts or future episode tips, anything they'd like us to discuss, to penthouse or outhouse@gmail.com. Yes, Will, I have made an email address. I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, essential.
And I'll, of course, see you next time when I'll be pitching to you another business. Hopefully this one you haven't heard of. I was hoping that this one was like further away enough in the ether that you wouldn't be quite so across it. But...
No. This was such an iconic mid-teens tech business. Yeah, this is one of my favorites of all. I rode the wave of that downfall along the tech media. It was some wonderful reporting.
Yeah, I think Bloomberg was the one that hit the home run on that. Yeah, kudos to them.
How good. All right. How good. Thanks, Ben. Episode 1 in the bag.
There we go. Cheers.
See ya.